Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Hilltop Podcast featuring Chaminade personalities. Today, I have the wonderful honor and the benefit to be joined by Coach Lee Engert, a longtime legend around these parts. So, we're going to talk to Coach Engert today about his time at Chaminade and also his legendary baseball coaching and playing career and teaching career at other stops along the way, too. So, thanks again, Coach Engert, for joining us here today, and thanks for being on our broadcast.
Thank you. It's a real honor.
Well, good. Like we said, it's an honor for us to have you join us as well. So, Coach Engert, I want to start at the very beginning. We usually like in these podcasts to sort of get to know our guest. I'm sorry, on a larger sense, not just within their Chaminade time, but can you tell us a little bit about your early life? Were you born in St. Louis? Where are you originally from? Kind of what were some of those early years of Lee Engert's life like?
Yeah, I was born here in St. Louis in 1929. And my mom and dad were so good to my brother and I. They were from Perryville, Missouri, and moved up to St. Louis. And we went to a Lutheran church, St. John's Lutheran Church, and they had a Lutheran elementary school that my mom and dad put Harry and I in, so that we were started in first grade and were there 8 years. And really, that was the biggest blessing of my life, that I got to know about God and his son, Jesus, and the Holy Spirit in such a way that it would guide me in everything I did. I can't remember the name of the minister, and sometimes I can, and sometimes I can't, but he was so good. He could bring God's word down to the level of the students, and all the students were so respectful. Sure, we didn't have that many, but they were so respectful of the teachers, and we got such a good education academically as well as God's word, really. And that, when I left there after eighth grade, those words from the good Lord guided me in everything I did when I went to Roosevelt High School, really.
Yeah, I saw from some of my research and the information I put together that you went to Roosevelt, and certainly we're talking to you today because of your legendary baseball coaching career, but you turned out to be quite a ball player too. It looks like from the research that I've gotten. Did you grow up playing baseball from as soon as you could
Yeah.
walk?
You know what? In seventh grade at St. John's School, I started the seventh grade team, and we played during the summer at other schools. Really, now we didn't have enough players there at the school, so I knew a few buddies that were outside our age that were able to play, and we also did that in eighth grade the next year. And then I had a cheerleader, and I had a girl that was a scorekeeper, and I had a teacher that was a sponsor. I mean, that's how we really enjoyed it so much. And that was probably the beginning of my career as far as baseball with other people, your teammates and others of surrounding it, really.
So
And
you're
that rose
even kind of a coach at that point, right? Sort of a
at
player
that
coach
point,
or leading the
exactly. And
team and
then
putting everything together.
at Roosevelt, I was part of the student council. I was president of the senior class. I played baseball and was captain my last year. And I also played basketball for Otto Ross, who was an All-American football player. And he was a football coach as well as a basketball coach. And he asked me when I was a junior to work on the summer playgrounds in St. Louis that he was responsible for in South St. Louis. And I told him, Coach, I'm not very big. And he said, Well, I know, but I know what kind of job you're going to do. And so I accepted it. And oh, how I enjoyed it so much. Here again, working with young kids and helping them. And I did it again as a senior, and I did it the 4 years I was in college. When I would come back home during the summer, that would be my job. And it was really a blessing from God that he would put me in that type of environment. Otto Ross tried to always get me to play football because I could run. And he'd say, see, the line averaged about 225. And he was a good coach. And he'd say, Lee, we just get you the ball and you get outside.
But he never got you on the team? You never played
No,
football?
no, I had to work and
Yes.
I had to work and I played baseball, basketball. One year we won the Normandy tournament when I was a junior. And I was a starter for 2 years in basketball, even though I wasn't very big, but I could do a lot of other things. I used to tell my teammates, you get them off the boards and I'll get them off the floor.
It's a good saying. The Normandy tournament was quite a
Yeah,
thing back in that day,
it's
right? That was the
it
premier
sure
tournament
was.
in the Midwest.
Exactly. Yeah, it was a real blessing to win that, really. So it that's why my 4 years at Roosevelt was really good, and they put me in the Hall of Fame there
I
at
do know that.
Roosevelt also.
We'll talk more about that in just a bit, but yeah, you're certainly a member of lots of Halls of Fame, so we'll cover that
Okay.
along the way. But
Okay, thanks.
Idle Ross and those summers of coaching, is that and working in the parks department, is that where you sort of, maybe fell in love with coaching and working with young people?
Oh yeah, exactly. I just loved it so much. And that was God that put me in that position, Rob, really, to get me to understand how you could help other people. And at that time, as we coached, we could talk about God. It wasn't just the baseball that we talked about. We talked about character, and God is part of our character, really. And see, poor nowadays, you have a hard time. You can't really do a lot of that, really. And see, at Chaminade, I was able to do a lot of that at Chaminade too. When we get to Chaminade, I'll have some
Sure.
stories.
Sure. Yeah, we're certainly in the fortunate position to be able to make that connection between our faith and education and faith and sports. And certainly one of the things
Exactly.
I love about being able to teach at a Catholic or Christian school in that way. So I saw from a little bit of my research that I think you were mainly a second baseman. Is that right?
Yes, I was. Yeah.
I found something from the Roosevelt Alumni Association website. It says one of the best second basemen never to play professional baseball. So was quite a statement. Was second base always your spot?
Yeah, I did play center field. I played when I got out of before I left. While I was in high school, I played amateur baseball, and some of the players that came back there, they played professional baseball. So I was surrounded around that a little bit, really. But when I graduated from Valparaiso University, I had a chance to sign with the Yankees, but I had a deferment to graduate because they wanted to draft me. So I knew I was going to leave August the 6th for the draft. And when I got out, my mom and dad were so good to me all those years. And who knows, I may never come back. I passed it up. Really, it would have been double A ball out in Ventura, California. And the scout was shocked when I wouldn't sign, but I prayed to God, and He kind of guided me because He had a plan down the road for me as to what I was going to do. Going to Valpo, I had three buddies. One had already started there, but two more that were going to start, and they wanted me to go. My mom and dad couldn't really afford it, but I was interested in knowing what was going on, and they were going early, so I went with them. And God had a plan there. They needed people to put furniture and dormitories. We did that. And then I found out that they needed somebody to clean classrooms at night during the school time. I did that 4 years. That's how I earned my degree, by cleaning classrooms,
Wow,
really. And it
good for you.
it didn't bother me at all because I was the kind of guy that didn't mind working.
A hard worker.
Really.
Now, what was your connection to Valpo? Was there a number of, you mentioned a couple friends there, but was that a sort of a pipeline from your area, or or what was the
Yeah,
connection
right.
with going to
Since my
Valparaiso?
mom and dad were Lutherans and I were Lutherans, that's why
Mhm.
my three buddies were Lutherans too. And that's why they went there. And man, what a good experience it was, Rob, because I not only got a good academic education, but we had to take a religion class every semester. And I can remember when I was a junior, I took a religion class, comparative Christianity. And this gentleman was 82 years old, minister that had retired, and oh, was he good. For example, when I started at Chaminade, that was a Catholic organization, religion. And here I was from Lutheran. And my wife even mentioned to me, and my mom, how you going to handle that? And I said, well, God will help me through that, really. But while I was there, Rob, my last year, we we gave finals to teachers. I gave a religious final, and I read it over before I gave it. Chaminade was teaching the Bible, really, and I remember telling, "Hey guys, if you guys believe and understand what you've been taught, you're on God's team, really." And I said, "That's the best team that we can really be on."
Amen,
Actually,
for sure.
it,
I
it built.
like the connection there between the two important things in your life, faith and coaching and teaching and working with young people, and that analogy
Right.
there for God's team.
Yeah.
That's a good touch.
Uh,
So yeah, you also certainly were very successful at Valpo. 441 batting average, it seems like, leading the team in stolen bases. How was the team in general, and what was your baseball career like there at
Pretty
Valpo?
good. The baseball coach didn't know much baseball. That's really. So we had to kind of teach each other a little bit, really. But we were pretty successful in playing, and that's what was important. That we enjoyed what we were doing, but we didn't learn that much from him. We learned from each other, really, and luckily we were a good team because we all got along well together and we could exchange different ideas and things like that. See, when I hit 441 when I was a junior, I hit a couple home runs. And so when I was a senior, you know what I was going to be? A home run hitter. And what a mistake that was. Or before I could hit a line drive to right center and slide into third. Well, I was hitting fly balls instead of line drives. Now I still hit well, I think 380, really, but yet, and I even use that example with my players as I coach as an example of how you approach things. You're not a home run hitter, you're a line drive hitter, really. And see, I can relate that when I coached at Rittner and coached at Chaminade. Intelligence is really important that a player has, that he can understand what fundamentals you're teaching. Like Rob, when Suzette told me you were a coach right away, I thought about, man, I wonder what fundamentals he really teaches. And that is so important. Nowadays, I wouldn't teach some of the things they do in the big leagues. Really. I mean, it doesn't make a lot of sense what they do and things like this. So, but here again, this is a person's philosophy of life, is what it really amounts to. And
Sure.
that's why my 11 years at, now we'll talk about Chaminade, but
No,
Valpo
that's
was
all right.
really good. See, they put
Good.
me in their Hall of Fame too. I still don't know. I got something yesterday in the mail from Valpo. They're having a golf tournament and they want the Hall of Famers to come back and everything. And I've never ever really been back. Because I've been working all my life, really, and to help my family, my children. And so, but here again, I donate something just like I do to
Good for you.
Chaminade and
Good for
like I
you.
do to Ritter,
Good
really.
for
But
you. So
it was a good experience.
Did you major in education? Was that always the plan to go into teaching down the road? Was that your focus at
I meant,
Valpo or?
business and physical education is what I majored in, those two things.
And
And
was
I
that
can
the,
remember my counselor, and boy, this is why counselors are so important to students. She said to me, Lee, if you take one more science class, you'll be able to teach science in school. And I said, oh. And so I took genetics. And oh, Rob, how I enjoyed that class. And see, when I'm teaching biology, even at Chaminade, why we got the genetics, and man, oh man. And the students just really enjoyed learning about that too. I had an administrator at Rittner that came to see me, and I was talking to the class, and we were talking genetics, and he sat in the back. When it was all over, he came up and said, "Man, Lee, I learned so much just listening." But see, if that counselor wouldn't have said that, Rob, I probably wouldn't have taken another science class. And this
right?
happened to me
Never know
eventually.
who's gonna be put in front of you or the path that, one decision can make. It can lead you down a path.
Exactly. Yeah. No doubt. No doubt about it. Really.
So where did your
Yeah.
interest in education come from and wanting to teach? Had your family been teachers
I
or
think,
sort of in that background?
no, no, not really. I think it started when I was in elementary school. That the way the teacher with us and taught us, and then how even in high school, why you conversed with each other and taught each other. I call that player to player teachers. Sometimes players can teach other players a lot more than a coach can teach them because of their particular approach to that subject. I can remember a lot of times Jerry Royce, we would they'd run the track and then run the straightaway and walk the turn, and they'd always go with somebody. And I would tell Jerry, I'd like for you to talk to this particular player about this fundamental. So that was player to player conversation. See, that's teaching. Towards it, there again, that was my particular philosophy, really. See, and
Just to
then
re
it felt, uh-huh.
I was going to say, just to revisit kind of your time, you mentioned it earlier about the end of Valpo. You had the opportunity to sign with the Yankees.
Yeah.
Maybe having to go into, did you go right into the Marines then? Is that when you went into
Well,
the Marines?
when I was drafted in August, we went down, and naturally I knew a lot of the guys there, and the Marines hadn't met their quota, so we had to draw out of a hat. Well, I drew an X. I was a Marine. The other two guys were crying. I had no clue, I said, about what the difference was. But the shortstop alongside of me at high school, he took the one guy's spot. And then a pitcher from Southwest High School there in St. Louis, he took. So the three of us went to boot camp, really. And then I didn't want to be an officer, and they sent me to Quantico. And I was a small arms repairman there. And one day a major came over and said, "Hey, Lee, we want you to play on our baseball team." And I looked at him and I said, "What are you talking about?" And he said, "Well, we checked your record. We heard you play ball. We checked your record. My God, you'll be our second baseman." So I did that for 2 years, really. But also, I met my wife when I went to a dance, and she was a volunteer there. And see, here again, that was God, why he put me in the Marine Corps rather than the Army, Rob. And so that when I got out, I realized that playing professional baseball, you're away from your family a lot traveling. I didn't really want that particular environment, really. And so when I got out, I no longer was interested in playing professional baseball. I was the only guy on the team that hadn't played professional baseball. Most of it was minor league, but our catcher, Hal Narragon, he was from the Cleveland Indians. I tagged Willie Mays out stealing, and we beat
Wow.
Whitey Ford. We beat Whitey Ford in a game. So the
Wow.
Army, see, that was a time when a lot of them were drafted, really. And it was amazing. When we played the Army team that Willie Mays was on, The bus pulls up and there's a pink Cadillac behind the bus. Guess who's driving that pink Cadillac?
He
Willie
had his
Mays.
own special treatment, huh?
He was really a nice guy. He hit the he made the best throw I've ever seen, and he hit a home run that was out of sight, really. And he was really a nice person
So you had a
back
chance to
then.
interact with him some too, sort of outside of the field.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Uh-huh. Exactly. He could play poker and shoot dice and stuff like that. I know he canceled checks that were no good from some guys that were playing dice.
Well, that's amazing. I didn't realize you had those interactions with those the greats of the game in
Oh
that way.
gosh, yeah. The
That's got to
throw
be
he made from right center to third base. We had a guy from Southern California, Jay Bird, I nicknamed him, and he was on first, going from first to third on a base hit. Willie Mays goes over and catches it one bounce up in the air, throws a bullet to third base. The third baseman had the ball before Jay Bird slid. I mean, it was amazing. I mean, I looked up and said, "Oh my heaven, man!" But see, that's the kind of talent that he had. And remember, was it DeRocher that sent him down to learn the strike zone when he was in the big leagues?
right.
See, so that's what he had done, really. But
And
it
it
was good. And see here again, that was all God, and he did that because I turned down the opportunity to play a couple of months in the Yankee organization, really.
Sure. So you had
So,
a different, not in professional baseball, but you had the opportunity to play with these,
right,
with the pros, right?
right,
In a different setting, but very much the same.
right, yeah. And some personalities were positive, and some personalities were negative also. So here again, that's another environment if you really want to get involved with that particular situation. And spent a lot of time with my to be wife. Why we decided to get married when I got out of the Marine Corps, and that's what we did. August 15th, 1953. I was in the Marine Corps from 51 to 53. And uh, that's when I got out. I had a good job with General Motors, and the best man at my wedding was the middleman between the union and General Motors, and I was in the CEO program going 2 weeks to the different, and it's with some of the people from the union. It wasn't one that I cherished. So I came home one night. My wife said, "What's wrong?" I said, "I'm going to look for a different job." And she said, "Well, I said, "Well, I put out my resumes to teach." I said, "So I'm going to follow up." And that was the second week of September. School already started. So Rittner and St. Charles got an opening. So I stopped at Rittner first and interviewed. They had a sixth grade job that was open that they only had substitutes at. So I told them, I said, "You know what? I'll sign. I want that job, but you got to give me 2 weeks to let the place I'm working at now. I just don't want to leave that right now." So that's how I started really there. And here another story, Rob. When I left that day, it was 4 o'clock, and a football team was practicing. So I went out, sat in the bleachers, and watched. Well, all of a sudden, I saw a man come up and it would have been the west side, came up the bleachers, and he came over and said, "Can I help you?" He thought I was scouting him, see? And I said, "No." I said, I'm just up here. I interviewed for a job I'm going to take in a couple of weeks." And he said, "What's your name?" And I said, "Lee Engert." "Lee Engert, did you used to play basketball for St. John's Lutheran Church?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Oh, my heavens, I officiated. I remember one time I made a terrible call. You came over in the nicest way and talked to me. And now he sat down next to me. He was the head coach football and the athletic director. And he had gone to Roosevelt High School, Rob. And he
Small
was an
world.
ex-Marine. He had guys die in his arms. And So we got talking, and he said, "Hey, I need a sophomore football coach. Can you help me?" And I said, I know a little about football, but not that much. So that's how I got started at the high school. And I spent 2 years in sixth grade. They sent me to Midland, which was closer to the high school. On Mondays, I'd have to go for a sophomore football game. So I'd have to leave my class. At Midland, nobody ever took my spot in that classroom. The fourth
Oh,
grade
wow.
teacher, the fourth grade teacher would come over and check on them. And she would say, "Lee, I don't know how you do it, but I go my room, they're talking and monkeying around. Go over to your room and they're all working."
Good for you.
I think that was amazing, really. That
Good for
was,
you. So
well, I had three.
were you just teaching science or were you teaching kind of all the
No, I'm
subjects in sixth
teaching
grade?
everything. Yeah, yeah. There's a story there too. A boy that didn't know his multiplication tables. Tom, his name was Tom Patterson. I'll never forget. I said, "How come, Tom?" He said, "Oh, I hated my fourth and fifth grade teachers." And I said, "Let me tell you something, buddy. They knew the multiplication tables, but you, dumb old you cheated yourself by not learning. So you know how we could put the answers on a sheet of paper by the, okay, I had him do that. And I told the class, "Hey, when you're taking a test, Tom over there has got all the answers, 7 times 7. You can go over quietly and you can use them too. So he's not cheating, really." In 2 weeks, you know what happened to that? He threw that away. He learned them all in practice. See, even in that sixth grade class, I had a softball team and we played touch volleyball during a certain time of the year. Really? See, that was coaching too. They wanted
Sounds
me
like
to become, yeah, they wanted me to become an elementary principal. And she said, "I got it all set up." And I said, "I appreciate that, but I want to go to the high school. I want to coach and I want to teach." And so that's what I ended up doing. See, I
good
could
for
have
you.
been yeah, I could have been in administration at the high school, but I wanted to work with the kids. That's what I wanted to do, which I enjoyed so much.
Well, it sounds like a
See,
great sixth grade class to be a part of, especially for a person coming off the street, right? Not from, you know,
yeah,
not from having teaching experience, right? You come out of the business world and you get thrust into a sixth grade class that's already sort of partway into the year.
yeah,
That's pretty challenging
exactly.
environment.
Yeah. We had plays. The other teacher, sixth grade teacher, he was interested in plays. And I said, "Sure, I'll help you, but I don't know anything about it." Oh my God. The play was so good. They wanted another one. The parents were so involved and it was amazing, really. But
Good.
see, that's what started my career at the high school then. And John Moore was my mentor. Oh, was that a great experience, really? No doubt,
Before we
no
jump
doubt
into
about
Ritter
it.
High School, I want to step back just a half step. You mentioned your wife a few times. You mentioned you met at the at a dance in the military. I'm
Yeah.
sorry, I don't even know her name. Share with us her name and a little bit more about how you guys met and
Yeah,
your the early parts of your relationship.
Julie Bronson was her name. And I was with the first baseman from the baseball team. And I said to him, "I'm going to ask that blonde to dance over there." Well, she and I had so much fun dancing and communicating. We laughed so much. And so that her two teachers, her two sisters she lived with, Grace, her one girlfriend, they wanted me to come back on weekends to visit with them and eat. And so I'd have to come back up from uh, where we were stationed with the Marine Corps in order to do that in Washington, D.C. And I had a way to get a ride up there and a ride home and everything. So, which I did. And we became so close that we decided we wanted to spend the rest of our life together. See, that was God right there again, Rob. That's how I met my wife, really. And have you ever heard of Charles Bronson,
I
the
have, yes.
actor?
Hmm.
All right, that was her brother,
Oh, really?
really.
Wow.
She was one of 12. Her mother could speak 5 different languages. She was an interpreter, I guess 7 different languages. She was an interpreter in the course of law. Her dad was a prisoner over in Germany and escaped and got back home and that. And
Oh,
she never got to know him because he died when she was 2 years old. But she's
wow.
in heaven now, and I'm sure they're spending every day talking. She
Right.
was just a jewel. I could have never, ever done the things I did in coaching without her help, really, because she had to do a lot of things at home. And our three daughters, she didn't work when our daughters were born because I said, babe, I know some students in class, I can tell that their mom's not at home helping them. So this is why our three daughters turned out so good. You've talked with Suzette quite a bit,
Hmm.
really. So you
Sounds
get
like
my,
she had a heck of a life too, right? And her
oh,
family and her background and such.
oh,
That's
right.
amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. I have to a grandson, Nick, and a granddaughter, Mandy. And Nick had two children, so I'm a great grandson. My wife held the girl, Evie, when she was born. And then I have a great grandson, Wyatt. He'll probably be a left-handed pitcher.
Yeah, very good. That's the kind of pitcher to be, right? That's your ticket
Yeah.
right there, a left-handed pitcher. We all know that. Well, good. Well, that's great to hear. So thanks for sharing that personal detail. So yeah, let's jump
Yeah.
now to Rittner High School and get into that. You were starting to mention sort of a mentor there at the high school,
Yeah. John Moore. Yeah. He
John Moore,
was so
right?
good. He was
Is he
so
a
good.
coach too, or
He was a football coach and a wrestling coach. They run a state wrestling championship, I don't know, 12 years in a row. He was so good. And his approach with kids, Rob, was so good, so positive. And that's because in the Marine Corps, he had guys die in his arms. So he knew the importance about helping other people, really. And that's the way he was to our coaching staff. Yeah, I was fortunate. All the people I worked with as coaches at Rittner, we all knew God. We all knew the purpose that he wanted us to do with the kids. And we all did that and got along. We fished together a lot. And sometimes we fished streams where we waited, we'd be sitting down resting, and we'd start talking about some of our players and what problems they have, how we can help them, and things like that, really. And that's why that experience was so good. My baseball program there, and I became the head coach in, I guess, 58. Yeah, 58. We won the league championship 13 years in a row. And that was North County, which was really a difficult league. But it was amazing. I used to have chalk talks. That's where I taught the game in the classroom. And then they went out and put it to use on the field, really. Never hollered at them, never cursed at. That's why I see some of this stuff on TV. You're not gonna, a kid didn't do it on purpose. Really, either you didn't train him or he didn't have the right background or you shouldn't have recruited him or whatever that because that's what it is on a college level. And that's why my association there at Rittner was so good with the kids and a lot of the biology classes. I still get information on my iPad about my classes, and I started a driver ed class. And one girl mentioned I still drive just like Mr. Engert taught. IFTY, identify, predict, decide, and execute.
good
And we
deal.
had
You had
simulators. We had simulators, and the government paid for all that. See, that was from the teaching part of it. See, I started teaching biology and then they needed me over in physical education. So that's when I just taught health and physical education, really, and then with my coaching. And I helped coach basketball a little bit when I needed to coach, but my primary thing was the baseball part of it. And Bob Berta was the first guy, and he played for the Cardinals for a few years. He signed in '57, then Ron Hunt signed in '59. I don't know if you ever heard that name.
I have, yeah.
And
You
he was
mentioned, I know you mentioned Jerry Royce before, so you certainly had the opportunity to coach some greats that went on
Jerry
you
Royce,
know,
and
a lot
then
of success.
Alex Eckelman and Chaminade. He was in
Hmm.
professional baseball 10 years.
Hmm.
Really, I think
So,
he's
and
still.
you had the benefit to, or the fortune to coach two state championship teams there at Ridner.
Yeah, Rittner. Yeah, there would have been
What do you
three.
what do you take from those state championship teams there at Ridner? What stands out to you, and what sort of maybe got that team over the hump or separated those teams from some other great teams you had?
Number one, players listening, and then number two, the players performing like they needed to do. Really, if a player made a mistake, I had my arm around him. That shows I love you. Okay, and let's talk. Sometimes I just say, talk to me, and they'd give me the answer right away, what they did wrong. And so they knew, but that's the human nature. You and I do things wrong at times too, right? I used to tell the class that, my biology class there at Chaminade, really. So it, yeah, but that's why the experience there was so good. And you know what? I never really had any problems with parents. Now, if a kid didn't have, uh, let's see, a good attitude as far as cooperating with teachers and things like that, they had to change that or they weren't going to play for me, really. And they had the opportunity to do that. And that we used to have training rules and they set that up. The team, once we got the team down to what we wanted, and it usually I always carried 25 players. Because the seniors play and the juniors, it would be they were learning for the next year is what they were doing, really. And uh, it was amazing how they would help to select the training rules about respect to teachers, listening, and things like that. And then also uh, with no drinking and no smoking and staying home at the right time. And in 1975, at the end of that year, we took third in the state. We lost because I made a poor decision with the pitcher, but the board was concerned about our training rules. And I was at that meeting, and I don't know if I should be mentioning this, but the next year's captain was there, and the board wanted me to drop those training rules. And I got up and said, well, I understand where you're coming from. I said, I won't answer that, but Dwight's here. He's next year's captain. He'll answer it for me. And he said, well, Coach Engert knows that there are some guys that don't always do what they should, but many of them do. And he'll resign. And that's what I did. And see, that's when I started at Merrimack Junior College. And I was there for 10 years. And then that's when I was still teaching at Rittner, really. And then I retired from Rittner, and I guess it was 87, I guess, that time, really. That's when I was looking for a job. And here again, God intervened with Mrs. Kavanaugh. Do you know Julie Lure?
Hmm.
Okay. Julie was Mrs. Kavanaugh's daughter, and they were friends of us. And I know Julie just lost her dad a couple of
She did,
years
yes.
ago. I
Right.
don't know. Is her mother still doing well? She
I
was
think so. I don't really know. I know she has the Kavanaugh connection, and we've had some Kavanaugh boys here since I've been here and such. So,
right.
but I didn't realize she was the
Exactly.
connection that you were connected to the Kavanaughs in that way.
Right. She said to me, well, what kind of job are you going to have? And I said, well, I don't really know. John Burroughs wants me to come over there and just coach. I said, but I'd like to do something else. And she was, well, Lee, she said, Chaminade needs a biology teacher. And she said, I think you can get the baseball stuff. I said, oh, she said, would you like an interview? And I said, maybe I would. You know what she said? I'll set it up for you. Now that's how the mothers were involved with Chaminade School, and they still are today. And so she set up the interview, and I went over there, and I can't remember the principal name anymore then at that time. And he was such a nice guy. He wasn't married, and I took the job really, and I taught biology there too, as well as coaching baseball. And boy, what a good environment that was for Rob and alive. It's amazing. And we talk about the Mothers Club. My first year, they wanted to start a Fathers Club. Well, some of the coaches were against it because you know the way some fathers are. And I said, you know what? I said, if we could get the fathers to understand what their jobs really are, I said they could be as beneficial to our athletic program as the mothers are to the school program. So we decided to go ahead with it. Oh my heavens, look how good the Fathers Club is. They have the barbecue for before the first football game, don't they?
Yep,
The
it's still
Fathers
happening.
Club does it, right?
Yep,
See?
that's still happening
Yeah,
for sure. Yep.
yeah, see, that's so good. I
There's a
haven't.
lot going on. Sure. Yep. They're still very active here. So what was it like coming from, a public school, but also a co-ed, obviously, school to a Catholic Christian school and an all boys school? What was the classroom
Well,
environment like? Did that take
it,
some
it,
adjustment?
it was really good. I always kept the Bible on my desk. And I can remember one of the short stuff I had. His dad died, and he came after me after school one day. Hey, coach, could I come in a day and we talk a little bit, some Bible verses about how I can help overcome losing my dad? And I said, oh, sure, really. And I don't know if they still do it, but the priest every Monday, you all would have the whole group of students would get together and he would talk to them about parts of the Bible. Well, they knew when they came. I had one senior class and the rest sophomore classes in biology. They knew when they were coming to my class that the first thing we're going to talk about today was every Monday what the priest talked about today at his sermon. I remember one student said, Mr. Engert, you'd rather talk about that than biology. And I said, well, let me tell you something, buddy. Without God, you and I wouldn't be here, really.
The
And
truth.
so it was a good thing. The students really got to understand a little bit more about the good Lord and how he shapes our life. And I think that knowledge of God helped those students become good baseball players too, because they learned to really, really listen. I don't know their baseball knowledge. I asked a few questions when I first got there, and the answers that I got told me there was nobody home early. So
Yeah,
that's
that
when
was
we
going to be
started.
my next
We
question.
start,
What was it like to come and sort of, not start the baseball program? I know it existed before, but sort of maybe rejuvenate or, mold it into
well,
your image. What was that like?
we were going to, it was great. Man, it was a great challenge for me. We started with Choctaws. And I can remember the first practice, Massa and Webemeyer. Yeah, I always had sheets that I gave the coaches so they would know what we were doing. I had it in a book. And they were going out in the field. And Webb says to me, where are you going to be? I said, well, I'm going to be in the classroom. I know what the students are going to be out on the field. I said, I'm going to be teaching them. And that started. Webemeyer bought into everything I talked about. That's why in 1998, he won the state championship. He was a coach then. And I was retired, but he and I communicated. He and I are such good friends. I still talk with him quite often. And I came up and helped him quite a bit. Here's what I did. But the students, here's where I felt intelligence was really important, Rob, because all these fundamentals that I taught were really, really picked up by them and utilized by them, really. And that was important to them, but it was important to me. I can remember the first year we're getting off the bus, and I was always the last student off, the last person off, because I could check the bus, and the catcher's waiting for me. Later on, his dad put some kind of monument up there that showed the scoreboard, and that's gone now. But he said, "Hey, coach, I want to mention something to you." And I said, "Yeah, what you got on your mind?" He said, "We won more games right now than we won all last year." See, so the students realized too, really. And then, 1991, we went down to and used the Philadelphia Philly complex. 91 and 92 went down to Florida for the 2 week break that we had. See, that gave us a lot down there. And I knew a guy from Rittner. He played before me, but he was a head scout for Philadelphia. And he and I were good friends, and we were talking. And he said, "Man, Lee," he said, "maybe I can help you utilize, and you all could come in and utilize Philadelphia's practice area." So he checked it out, and sure enough, when they finished practice at 3 o'clock, Rob, we took over their whole facility. I used to tell the players, "Man, oh man, the guys at Rittner would have given their right arm to be able to do that, really." And I can remember in 1992, four fathers went along. We took a bus because the basketball coach at Merrimack, had a bus group that he would rent out and that. So I called him. He said, "Oh my God, Lee." He said, "You're going to go to," he said, "I'm going to drive the bus. I'm going with you." Really? So, and the fathers were along, and we had more and more fun. And those four fathers, Rob, I wouldn't say this very often, but they and their wives, my wife would get together with them, and we would go eat at different houses or eat outside somewhere. Now, how often does a coach do that with the parents of the students? That was Alex Eckelman and Bill Morf and Jim Brickler. Brickler led the area in ERA that year, and also Saunders, the third baseman, really. And Matt Cavanaugh was the second baseman on that team that year, too. Really, I thought big time player, really. That was in 92 when we had a team that we never lost a game. Now, that's
Yeah, let's
unusual for high
that
school.
I certainly wanted to dig into that 92 team, not only a state championship team, but yes, 26 and 0, unbelievable. Yeah, I've never heard of another team in my time in baseball going undefeated. Certainly, I've seen some good teams in the area and around, but that's quite an accomplishment to go undefeated in an entire season in the game of baseball.
Uh, well, the name of the game is pitching and defense.
Is
And
that what you had?
yeah, and defense is your catcher as well as your pitchers. And man, we had Brickler and a fellow by the name of Volk. And Volk was a big left-handed pitcher. He ended up pitching at Ohio State for Bob Todd, who was a captain for me in 1966 at Rittner. And he was at Ohio State for a long time. He still calls me once a month, is what he still does, really. But and then Derek Falb would come in and be relief pitcher, and so would Cavanaugh. Now, another lad that would have been an outstanding pitcher, and I told him that I probably cheated him, would have been Alex Eckelman, and he was the shortstop. But if you take the shortstop out, you're breaking up that whole defense. So that's why talking to him, I said, I'd rather not do that. We'll develop other relief pitchers. And I don't believe in relief pitchers much. You train them and condition their fundamentals that they're going to pitch either 7 innings or 9 innings and things like this, really. So, but Derek Fall became the relief pitcher, really, and he was an outfielder. He was a center fielder. You know
So
him, I'm sure,
Yep, his
because
sons are here now.
yeah,
One just graduated last year, and
yeah, right,
one's still here now. So he's a great
yeah,
guy and a great athlete in general, off of the baseball field too.
yeah.
Certainly here. Well,
Uh-huh.
did you have any close calls that year? Memorable games that might have broken up that undefeated streak or anything else like that that you remember from that year that stands out in a particular way?
No, I don't. The only one early, I can't think if it was who we were playing, Vianney maybe, and Polite was pitching for them.
Hmm.
And Polite's dad had played in the big leagues, I think, and some of the players knew him, and he was pitching, and we had Brickler pitching for us. But that was a close game. We had to come from behind to win that game. But that was early in the year. That could have been the second or third game, really, because I told the players, man, that's the way to fight and come back, really, because you beat a pretty good team and a pretty good player. But really, that's the only thing. I can remember the semifinals uh, up in Columbia. They hit, I forget the name of the team we played now. But anyway, the ball was hit in left center, and I saw Basta didn't get a jump, but Falb did. And man, Falb just makes an outstanding catch. They would have scored in that inning, but they didn't really. And that's because of good defense like that, really. And Derek Falb, he was the kind of guy that he was so intelligent, he could learn everything that you talked about, really. And Basta worked for Mercy Hospitals, and when he comes down here to Arkansas, he always calls me in. We go out for lunch or dinner, really.
Wonderful.
So, I mean, isn't that something, really? And
Great,
he
those
had to change it.
relationships, those connections.
Yeah, he had to change his attitude a little bit. He was a little careless sometimes. So I remember one game he was on a borderline. Maybe we're going to drop him, and man, he hustled so much. And I remember telling assistant coach, I said, man alive, I said, we can't drop anybody like that. I said, let's keep working it, keep helping him. And see, to this day, he still remembers that. And he's related that over. He uses your facility up there for baseball
Hmm.
sometimes with
Yep.
his teams and that. See,
Right.
so that I mean, see that those things get into your heart, Rob, and really give you a good feeling. And that's what God really wants you to do. No
For
doubt.
sure.
No, no
And
doubt about it.
who did you beat in the state championship game that year? Do you
I want to
recall?
say,
I don't
I
remember
want
in
to,
my notes who it
I want to
was.
say Columbia, I think, but I'm not sure. I don't remember
It's all
that
right.
at all, really.
That's all
But I
right.
remember the first game was pretty close, and the second game was a lot. Oh, the second game we beat Priory. Not
Mm.
yeah, not Priory, Parkway. Uh, no, it wasn't
Parkways.
Parkway. That was a Rittner game, I think, really. But
Oh, that's all right.
I
No, no.
remember we played two really pretty good games. You know what was good about that team? Bill Morf, he and I became really good friends, and his son was a first baseman, but so was Brickler. So the only time that his son would play was when Brickler pitched. When Brickler he played first base, so he had to sit. But his dad and I became such good friends. During a basketball game, we'd be always sitting up in the bleachers together, enjoying it, and so on. Really, and the
Good.
College World Series was in Omaha.
Hmm.
He arranged for three of us to go to the College World Series. And we did, you know what? We ended up going 4 years, is what we did. Now, here again, as a coach of a team, to be that close to your parents was just a miracle and a blessing from God. And my wife got along so well with the mothers, man. At Rittner High School, when my wife passed away, some of the players' wives, many of them married the gal that they met in high school. They would tell me stories how my wife brought them to know about the good Lord, because we would have a lot of times different things outside at my house, food and things like that, where the prayers could come over and they could bring their girlfriends with them. And that's how my wife got to know the girlfriends. And my
Wonderful.
wife was just that type of person to help people. And so many, she was just a jewel. See, right there, that's what I told you, Rob. I could have never done what I
Mhm.
did without my wife's help.
She was
It's
a teacher
amazing.
and a relationship builder in her own way too.
Yeah, in her own way.
For
Exactly.
sure. So we just got
She
a few other topics I want to cover. We just got about maybe 10 minutes or so left.
okay.
So sort of post-retirement, what you were here at Chaminade teaching and then continued to help coach even a little bit past you retirement. What have you been up to? What's life been like in retirement for you in the last what's it been, 20 years or so?
Yeah, 20 years. Yeah. Well, been doing different things at home. See, I could visit at Chaminade, I could visit at Rittner, and I could visit at John Burroughs. And in 2002, Andy called me and said, "Hey, Lee," he said, "I need a coach to help me." Well, we won the state championship that year over there, and Van Slyke was on that team. And remember, his dad was a player in the big leagues,
Right?
really. And he had the youngest boy. He hit a home run that year in the finals, and that ball had to go 400 feet, really. And it that was an altogether different environment over there, really. But see, that was part of it. That's seeing it, so I could go visit those different schools, and that's the different coaches. Does Tom Fernandez know that you and I are talking?
Yes, I believe he does, or he's gonna know shortly when we share this. If he doesn't already know, he's gonna know. So that was gonna be. Well, I've got two last questions for you. One was you've had the opportunity. You mentioned Van Slyke there. You mentioned we talked about Jerry Royce, Ron Hunt, Andy Eckelman here at Chaminade, and some of the other great Chaminade guys. What makes some of those guys stand out in your minds? Obviously, their physical ability, but what else did they have? We always talk in athletics about sort of the it factor. What is that it? Do you think that makes a standout athlete a standout
Well,
athlete?
they all had God in their heart, and they all had good parents, and their parents trained them and brought them up in the right way. So they were willing to listen. You got to listen in order to learn something, whatever it happens to be. And if it was baseball, that's at that time they would be listening about what we were talking about with the baseball. And they really absorbed all those things, really. And that was, I still remember the two secretaries, Judy Cunningham and Kathy. Now, I can't remember Kathy's last name, but oh, were they so good, Rob? I could go up there and talk to them if I needed something or whatever. Why, it was amazing. And my biology class, I had a lot of different animals. One time I had a snake and the snake got loose. So I went up and told Kathy, that snake been up here. Well, I didn't realize she was afraid of snakes.
I would be too. That would not be good for me.
But the students it wouldn't have harmed anybody, but the
Sure,
students could learn from that,
sure.
really. And that in 1992, I had that senior biology class, 15 in it. 5 of them became doctors out of
Wow.
that one class. My wife and I went to all 5 of their weddings. And the
Wow, that's
last
awesome.
wedding, all 5 were there. The one said, "Hey, coach, let's talk about our bio class." Because I believe you got to have fun at what you're doing, Rob. And a lot of times we'd be laughing at the beginning. Sometimes the laugh was on me. Well, so what? If it was, it was. And I'd say, "All right, let's get busy." And man, they'd get to work. And I mean, it was such a great class. Prickler was in there. And I said, "Tim, what are you doing in there? You're not going to use this." And he said, "Oh," he said, "I kind of like the teacher."
That's a good sign for sure.
He
Well,
said to him,
that
"To help your grade."
exactly.
We
Well,
had
that
kind
kind
of
of
fun like that,
is a
and we
good
would all laugh.
Exactly.
Really?
That's a good transition into my last question for you. We always like to wrap up these interviews with the same question for everybody, which ties back into our school motto of Esto Vir, which, as you know,
Oh, right
means
here.
to be a man.
Yeah,
So,
man.
in your opinion, so I'd like to ask everybody what in their own personal experience, their own personal experience of Chaminade or their own life experience, what does Esto Vir mean to you, to Lee Engert?
Oh, it means be a man. Put God, put the Holy Spirit in your heart and let him guide you at what you would do. You know, I had a bulletin board outside my biology class. That's where I would put the notes of what we were going to do at practice. Well, at lunchtime, they could come over and read that and look at it. Well, you know what? Be a man. Baseball was a advanced class. Seniors ought to get the first opportunity, unless a junior is that much better that he'll move in there and take his part, really. But that's why later on at Rittner, I started one game a week for the juniors, and the seniors had to go and sit on the bench for them. And see, that kept interest for the juniors.
Right.
Really, is
Yeah.
what it did. And really, but see, over at Chaminade, I can't even remember how many players I had anymore, but we did carry quite a few, really. But
Mhm.
the experience was so good. And my experience with Mike Massa, and Wibbemeyer was so good too. And Fernandez,
Right.
he took over as the athletic director, I think, after I left, I think,
Mhm. Yeah,
really.
he's still the AD now. Yeah.
Is he?
Well,
Yeah.
wonderful. Thank you overall, Coach Engert. We could go on and on. There's a number of topics that we didn't even get to that I wanted to cover, but sorry to have to end it at somewhere. We got to
Well, thanks a
draw
lot.
the
I
line. It's
appreciate
been a
it.
pleasure to talk with you today, and thanks so much for joining us today, but also the impact that you've had here at Chaminade, the great success you've brought to our teams, and the person that you've been in the lives of many of the Chaminade gentlemen, the relationships that you've created that you mentioned, and those that go beyond that.